Tonight in 9 News, rapid wait, no relief for Victoria's struggling testing system despite hundreds of thousands of tests on their way. Hospitals crippled by COVID warn patients to stay away from their emergency departments. Parents struggling to book their children in for their jabs amid concerns about vaccine supply. Australian Open staff to undergo regular testing as organisers revealed their plans to keep COVID at bay. A hefty surcharge revealed for the long-awaited Melbourne Airport rail. And tears as a Melbourne fan gets his dying wish.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Dougal Beattie.
Good evening. Hundreds of thousands of free rapid tests will arrive in Victoria this week, but that won't save the shortage nor the state's embattled testing system. Just 1 in 3 results are coming back within 24 hours, with 1 in every 5 returning positive, which has added a record 8,500 new cases. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
They're sold out at every chemist warehouse in the state, but don't expect the empty shelves and price gouging for rapid tests to be solved this week.
They will be in short supply.
In the coming days, hundreds of thousands are expected to touch down in Melbourne. All 34 million Victoria's bought will be available for free by the end of January, but the Health Minister still can't say who will get them or how.
Until we see them on the tarmac, we'll be a little bit sceptical.
Increasingly, we will be using rapid antigen tests for our asymptomatic people coming forward for testing. That will reduce the pressure on the overall PCR testing system.
Of the 1 million tests taken over the holidays, 1 in 3 has been getting their results in a day. Half are waiting longer than 48 hours.
I'd like to apologise to everybody who's waiting for your PCR test result. It is because we're seeing far more positive cases in our samples that we're having to do more work within our labs.
A remarkable 19% of today's 44,000 results were positive. Victoria adding a record 8,500 new cases to a record 37,000 infections nationally.
It also means in the first 3 days of this new year, we've had more cases already than all of 2020.
The numbers here are not as important as the hospitalisations.
There are people being counted as being in hospital for COVID. They didn't go there for COVID. They went there for some other reason, and that's why they were admitted.
If they're showing up for their cancer treatment, if they're showing up for their broken bones or their car accidents, they have to be treated as if they are highly infectious.
In Victoria, hospitalisations are creeping up. 56 are getting intensive care out of 38,000 active cases. That's 1 in every 1,500 Victorians known to be infected, and almost every one of them is unvaccinated.
An entire level of the Alfred's ICU on Friday was full of people, every one of them, who was not fully vaccinated.
If you're in hospital at the moment, the primary reason for that is you weren't vaccinated. The second reason for that is you've got Delta, not Omicron.
Scott Morrison using himself as the example of how QR codes should be used in 2022 after being exposed at a press conference last week.
No one's been isolated, no one's been kept away from work, no one's had to go and take a test, no one's had to do any of those things. It's just an alert system now.
At this point in time, we'd want people to continue to use the QR codes. It provides an important way for you to remember where you've been.
They will be enforced at the Australian Open, with Martin Foley brushing off calls to cap crowd numbers.
We don't rule out the prospects of adding or indeed subtracting to the public health orders.
The days of lockdown are gone. We're going forward. We're not going back.
And Mark, the hospital's definition of COVID patients could soon change.
Well, the Prime Minister would like to establish a new standard definition at the next National Cabinet. Dougal, right now, if someone has a car accident and needs a bed and subsequently tests positive, they'd be included in the daily numbers, even if they don't have a single symptom of COVID-19. Now, as Martin Foley correctly points out, they have to be treated like they are infectious, and that takes a toll on staff. But Scott Morrison wants to make sure that we can paint the most accurate picture of Omicron's threat as possible, which we obviously need to know if rules are going to be designed to try and prevent thousands of infected patients clogging up our hospital system at any given time. Dougal?
All right, Mark Santomartino, thank you. Major hospitals in Melbourne's west are buckling under extreme COVID pressure tonight. Struggling with severe staff shortages, they've told non-urgent patients to stay away from their emergency departments. Elizabeth Moss has more.
Sunshine Hospital this afternoon. A dozen ambulances, each with a patient waiting to get inside. A picture of a system under increasing pressure, prompting this desperate plea from Western Health. Our emergency departments at Sunshine, Footscray and Williamstown hospitals are currently under extreme pressure. Please do not attend the ED unless absolutely necessary. A cocktail of limited beds, the usual public holiday rush and staff shortages in part to blame. And it's not just Western Health.
It's probably never been as bad as it is now. There are always holes in rosters.
I continue to be very concerned that all of our emergency departments are facing unprecedented demand.
1,700 Victorian healthcare workers are now a close social or workplace contact of someone with the virus.
There are inevitably delays in certain areas providing care, and there are some areas that we simply cannot open because of both nursing and medical shortages.
The government today changing the isolation rules, meaning a healthcare worker who is a household-like contact can return to work sooner, but with strict conditions.
That requires them to undertake a structured regime of daily rapid antigen testing before going to work, to not have symptoms and to go through a control process that will be rolled out by our healthcare services.
Part of the problem at Western Health is also that people with mild symptoms are showing up at emergency wanting a COVID test. Instead, they're being told to go to a testing site unless, of course, it is an emergency.
If you are facing a serious health incident, then that's what O is for. It's not for milder cases.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
Parents say they're battling to book their children in for the jab just weeks out from the start of term 1. GPs and pharmacies are nervous about vaccine supply, some even cancelling existing appointments. More from Reid Butler.
Werribee dad Mario Osimo hasn't locked in a vaccine booking for his 3 boys yet, and if he can't get them in by term 1, the kids won't be returning to the classroom.
We'll have to homeschool them like we've been doing for the last 2 years. That's all we can do, I suppose. I'd rather leave them at home than having them catch the COVID.
I don't want to get COVID really badly and get sick and all that.
Despite children aged between 5 and 11 being eligible for paediatric Pfizer in just 1 week, many parents have been unable to secure a booking at a pharmacy or GP clinic. Here's why.
We haven't received any of the kids' vaccines yet. It's expected maybe end of this week or next week.
Maybe being the key word, and Dr Joe Gower is among the medical professionals not accepting bookings because of the uncertainty.
We don't want to book people in and there's some delay in the delivery and then we're ringing up people saying, don't come.
On the Terry White booking page, there's only a handful of Melbourne pharmacies with availability and just 1 offering child jabs before the school year starts.
We've been all promised, whether it's state-run clinics or GPs or pharmacies supply from the Commonwealth this week. General Fruin has been pretty good since he took over in making sure supply is delivered.
The Victorian government is confident enough to open bookings for kids at state-run clinics, but already a snag. Parents were told they could make a booking next week from tomorrow at 8 a.m, but a glitch in the system has delayed the launch by at least 24 hours. Those who received their second jab as recently as 4 months ago will be able to get their booster at state-run hubs from tomorrow. 11% of eligible Victorians have already had their 3rd shot. So if you've been double jabbed since September, you can now receive your booster. That's around 1 million additional people. Reid Butler, 9 News.
Charges have been laid following an alleged hit-run in Campbellfield on Saturday, which left a scooter rider fighting for life. A 45-year-old Dallas man is facing multiple offences, including dangerous driving causing injury and failing to stop. He fronted the Melbourne Magistrates Court this afternoon. The injured 46-year-old man remains in hospital in a critical condition. Travellers taking the future Melbourne Airport rail link will have to pay a hefty surcharge. Train users have told Adam Hegarty there will need to be concessions to make it worthwhile.
Shanghai, Denver, Paris, Heathrow. Airport trains are fast, convenient, and very, very common, unless you're in Melbourne, where Skybus has the monopoly on public transport, airport commuters.
Because my friends are too lazy to take me to the airport.
Eventually, the Melbourne Airport Rail will boost competition. A 30-minute train ride to Tullamarine. It's 7 years away, But ticket price modelling is already showing it'll cost us.
What we're seeing is a fare which is probably okay for some people, particularly if you're travelling on your own. But if you're travelling in a big group, say with your family, that does add up pretty quickly.
An $18 surcharge for the airport line. If it were added to a current Mikey fare, you'd be paying up to $22.50. That's more than the $19 on the Sky Bus, while in Sydney, the airport rail surcharge is only $15. Though there is a reason for that. There will be a lot of train track between the airport and the CBD compared to Sydney. It's about double the distance, and they'll need to pay for it somehow.
The biggest issue is the travel time compared to the car. The new railway is a dogleg. It goes all the way west to Sunshine and then comes to the city. So unfortunately its travel time will not be very competitive.
There are bound to be incentives like pricing concessions for families and airport workers. That, though, is not the current government's problem.
The final price of the ticket will be determined closer to the date of its operation.
Hopefully by 2029. Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
A Victorian man has been charged with deliberately lighting a fire which destroyed the entrance of Old Parliament House last week. The 30-year-old was arrested in the Canberra suburb of Parkes last night and is expected to face court tomorrow. 3 others have been charged over their role in the protest. The Treasurer says Australia is experiencing a New Year jobs boom, framing the election as a referendum on economic recovery. The opposition leader, meanwhile, has his own ideas for creating employment by building a fleet of Australian ships. Eliza Edwards has more.
Good morning, PM.
A TV blitz for both leaders as the starting gun fires on an election year.
This is a government that doesn't have a vision.
I don't think you'd want that bloke running the team.
The current captain promising the nation will remain open in 2022, even as COVID cases and hospitalisations surge.
The days of lockdown are gone. We're going forward. We're not going back.
Jobs, on the other hand, are bouncing back from the long winter shutdowns. Tax Office data shows 485,000 payroll jobs have been added to the economy since September, with employment 5.7% higher than before the pandemic began.
Australia is experiencing a jobs boom.
That hides the fact that 2 million Australians are either unemployed or want more hours.
The opposition leader took his campaign for the country's top job to the skies over the New South Wales Hunter region. On the ground, pledging to create a strategic fleet of 12 Australian ships to shore up fuel supplies and trade in an increasingly uncertain time.
So that we can stand on our own 2 feet, so that we're less vulnerable to shocks in global events.
The policy is almost identical to one Labor took to the 2019 election, proving in politics all that is old can be new again.
This is a policy that is more needed than it was 3 years ago.
What Labor needs is to hold its 3 Hunter seats and gain ground elsewhere to produce a different election outcome than 2019. Anthony Albanese denies his 2-day visit to the region is a sign he's worried.
I make no apology either for wanting to represent the Labor heartland.
Eliza Edwards, 9 News.
Preparations are well underway ahead of the Australian Open, with players declaring they feel safe here despite growing infection numbers. Braden Ingram joins us now from Melbourne Park. Braden, what precautions will be in place?
Well, Dougal, to ensure the tournament goes ahead smoothly, all tournament staff will be required to undergo rapid testing daily, while players will also be subjected to rapid testing. But when it comes to patrons, the onus will be on them to get tested if they're symptomatic before their arrival. There won't be a requirement for testing for entry, nor will there be a facility on site. Now, there were a number of high-profile players out doing the media rounds today. They say they have no problem taking to the court against a player who has a medical exemption from vaccination. The focus, of course, still very much around Novak Djokovic and his vaccination status, and will he or won't he make the trip down to Australia. The focus, though, around the players, they say that they're still very relaxed out being in Melbourne.
Much easier and much more relaxed. I feel safe. I feel like everybody is taking care of themselves and is no risk.
I've already tested 3 times, I think. Yeah, I think so, since I'm here, so I'm okay with it. And I don't know, if I got to do another, 30 tests, I'm happy to do it.
Meanwhile, for Cricket Australia, it's been a challenging couple of weeks keeping both the Ashes and the Big Bash afloat. News today, their CEO Nick Hockley has tested positive. Fortunately, he hadn't been around any of the players. He's isolating, and therefore the Sydney Test starting on Wednesday will go ahead as planned. But in terms of the Big Bash, COVID has also already cut its way through a number of squads, including the Melbourne Stars. They lost 20 players, but news today that there'll be a bubble set up in Melbourne to complete the tournament. All clubs will be coming here in the closing weeks to ensure the competition can be completed. Dougal?
All right, Braden Ingram, thank you. Australia's cricketers swapped the famous baggy green for the baggy pink today as the 14th pink ball test in Sydney was officially launched. The match has doubled as the annual fundraiser for breast cancer research, with Day 3 named Jane McGrath Day in honour of the late cancer campaigner.
It's also one of the largest fundraising sporting activities around the world, and is something that we are exceptionally proud of.
Cricket fans keen to donate can buy a virtual seat at the ground from the McGrath Foundation. A Demon fan doing it tough has been given the ultimate surprise with a visit from the Premiership Cup. Gravely ill Warren Costabile was overwhelmed by the experience and the chance to share it with his young family. Clint Stanaway has the story.
First meetings don't get any more emotional than this. Resting in palliative care, Warren Costabile could hardly believe it. The Premiership Cup, won by his beloved Demons, now in his arms.
Oh my goodness, what a surprise. My wife Katrina brought it through, and I completely lost the plot, to be honest. It's an absolute dream come true for me, just to witness Melbourne winning a premiership, let alone have the cup.
Red and blue through and through since birth, Warren has been doing it tough these past few years. Originally diagnosed with colon cancer, the disease has now spread to his liver, which makes moments like these
I don't know what to say.
extra special.
To come to the end of my time and have that happen is, you know, there's no words. It's just a bucket list moment.
It's also something wife Katrina and little girls Summer and Harmony will treasure forever. Their favourite person, so happy, so content in his final days.
Oh my God. For my 45 years being here on the planet, it's been an absolute privilege to be part of the football club.
Further proof footy is much more than a game. Just ask Warren.
What a dream come true.
A GoFundMe page has been set up to help the family. Just search Warren Costabile. Clint Stanaway, 9 News.
Great story. Protesters have been mauled by dogs and beaten by police in violent clashes over COVID restrictions in Amsterdam. Up next, how Omicron is putting a strain on the rest of the world. Plus, fresh heartache for the Queen as she mourns her lady-in-waiting. And king tides and massive swells as Cyclone Seth packs a punch along the east coast.
News has no agenda. It can be frightening, devastating, uplifting. Don't just hear the news. Don't just see the news. Trust the news. This is Melbourne's 9 News.
A grass fire at Altona shut down the Princes Freeway in both directions for 3 hours as flames and thick smoke billowed into the air. Around 2 hectares of grassland was burnt before the fire was brought under control just after 1 a.m. It's not being treated as suspicious. No one was injured. 10,000 protesters angry over strict lockdown rules have clashed with police, defying a ban on large gatherings in Amsterdam. As Amelia Adams reports, despite the violence, the tough measures are being credited with slowing the infection rate.
Mauled by dogs, beaten by police. Anti-riot officers clashing with demonstrators in Amsterdam as thousands defied a ban on public gatherings to protest strict lockdowns and vaccine mandates implemented to stem a wave of Omicron.
Unhappy people get sick.
In France, the rapidly spreading variant has prompted a crackdown on the unvaccinated. Travellers from the United States now required to quarantine for 10 days, while Israel has recorded its first case of flurona, an unvaccinated pregnant woman infected with COVID and the seasonal flu.
The critically important message, I think, from flurona is that we've got a vaccine for both of those conditions.
Authorities hoping the surge in COVID cases will help the country reach herd immunity.
Omicron is not Delta. It's a different ballgame altogether.
And America is shattering case records with close to 400,000 new infections each day.
The real bottom line that you want to be concerned about is, are we getting protected by the vaccines from severe disease leading to hospitalisation?
Hospitalisations are slowly rising, COVID deaths dropping slightly to just over 1,200 a day. At least 5 states calling in the National Guard to help but struggling hospitals.
And it's Omicron, not lockdowns, now threatening to derail the US economy. Thousands of businesses have been forced to close their doors due to staff shortages, while transport and travel have been thrown into chaos.
Several New York subway lines have been suspended. More than 2,000 domestic and international flights cancelled today alone, nearly 15,000 since Christmas, due to crew shortages and some bad weather, making for a very unhappy holiday season. In the United States, Amelia Adams, 9 News.
The Queen is mourning her close friend and lady-in-waiting. Lady Diana Farnham died at home on December 29, aged 90. She served the monarch for 44 years and accompanied her to the Diamond Jubilee in 2012 when Prince Philip was sick. It caps off a sad year following the deaths of her husband and another confidant, the Duchess of Grafton. Hong Kong online publication Citizen News has announced it's shutting down, blaming deteriorating press freedom in the Chinese-ruled city. The site will cease operations tomorrow, confirming the decision was made to protect its staff. It follows police raids on the offices of another outlet, Stan News, and the arrest of several of its editors. Holiday-starved Victorians are fleeing interstate in droves rather than overseas, with record numbers passing through Melbourne Airport. But travellers are being warned accommodation is more expensive and COVID cancellations may not automatically result in a refund. Details in Chris Kohler's special report a little later in 9 News. A large swell from ex-tropical cyclone Seth is causing havoc along Australia's east coast. As Laura Tunstall explains, lifeguards couldn't save a woman caught in huge waves.
A family holiday in Coffs Harbour cut short by tragedy. A 47-year-old woman pulled unconscious from the water at Park Beach this afternoon. Paramedics performing CPR on the sand, but sadly she was unable to be revived.
She started at the river mouth. It appears that she may have been swept by the current going out to sea. She was able to find her footing as per the bystanders. Unfortunately, she was then swept out into the rough surf.
Lifesavers finding themselves swamped as thousands flock to our coastline.
It's been the busiest operational period that we've had in the last 5 years. Given the public are restricted in terms of holidaying overseas, we are seeing a large influx of people across the New South Wales coast.
Over the weekend alone, 329 rescues were carried out, lifesavers having to perform CPR on 4 people. 2 rock fishermen lost their lives. There's also the effects of ex-tropical cyclone Seth, which is continuing to bring heavy surf and dangerous winds to the east coast.
Definitely not a great day to be out on the water. From anywhere between Fraser Island all the way down to the New South Wales border and indeed into northeast New South Wales as well.
Bribie Island cut in half by the swell. On the Gold Coast, the big waves had local surfers putting on a show. Those not brave enough to go in it were watching on from the shore as barrel after barrel pummeled the coast. A sad sight at Currumbin, the force of the waves sweeping this shipping container off the sand and into the water.
Look at the beer!
Boxes of beer being swept out into the ocean. Rough seas at Ballina and further south at Crescent Head. And at Coffs Harbour, this jet ski looked like it was in a washing machine. Sydney can expect to feel the effects of ex-tropical cyclone Seth tonight, and while it won't be as fierce as what the North Coast is experiencing, surfers can look forward to waves of up to 4 metres. Swimmers are being urged to stay between the flags and only swim at patrolled beaches. Today at Bondi, a big crowd on the sand and in the water. Tomorrow, everyone will need to be much more cautious. Laura Tunstall, 9 News.
Madeline Slater is here now for more on the weather, and will that system impact Victoria, Maddie?
It will, Dougal, not in terms of high tides, but thunderstorms and rain. Ex-tropical cyclone Seth is sitting off the Queensland coast, and it is expected to stay in that area for several days. This high pressure system will act as a cradle, holding the system in place, as well as this trough sitting over Victoria. From Wednesday, the tropical moisture from that system will be dragged in across the state, so we can expect humid conditions, thunderstorms, possibly severe, areas of heavy rain, and we're also in for a run of warm nights. Cloudy skies and the tropical moisture will trap the warmth of the day, leaving us with higher overnight minimums. I'll have all those details for you later in the bulletin, Dougal.
Okay, thanks, Maddie. We'll see you soon. Next in 9 News, mystery over why firearms were delayed as a suspicious blaze tore through South Africa's historic Parliament building. Plus, explosions in Brighton as a boat goes up in flames. And the common drug that can prevent heart attacks among diabetes patients. A boat has burst into flames in the driveway of a Brighton home this afternoon. Firefighters were sent to Oxford Street just after 1 o'clock after flames had spread to the house and were threatening neighbouring properties. Thankfully, no one was hurt. South Africa's Parliament building in Cape Town has been gutted by fire. Brett McLeod tells us a man is being questioned as investigators work out why the building's alarms were delayed.
Breaking through the roof, the fire raged above Cape Town. Sweeping through South Africa's historic Parliament building, filling it with flames and thick black smoke. More than 60 firefighters worked for hours to tackle the blaze. Flames started in the third floor offices, but fire also broke out in the National Assembly chamber where Parliament sits.
They will have to determine how the fire spread from the one blaze to the second blaze, because there's two very distinct areas where the fire is currently burning.
Investigators taking a 51-year-old man into custody.
I believe somebody is being held right now and they are being questioned, but we need to go a lot deeper.
There are now fears some parts of the complex may collapse, with walls left blackened and cracked by heat. The fire comes just a day after the nation farewelled Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who fought tirelessly for the creation of the country's democratic system.
Terrible and devastating event, particularly after we gave the Arch what I would call the best send-off yesterday.
This is a very sad day for our democracy because Parliament is the home of our democracy.
In London, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
A common drug used to lower blood sugar levels could also help prevent cardiac arrest, according to Melbourne researchers. As Kate Creedon reports, heart attack is the biggest killer and cause of disability in Australians with diabetes.
Daniel Katz is lucky to be alive. 15 years ago, the type 2 diabetic suffered a heart attack and had to be revived 29 times.
As my doctor said, very few survive such a event, and the statistics show it wasn't in my favour.
The 68-year-old now takes a diabetes drug known as dapagliflozin, sold as Forxiga, which doctors have long known reduces the risk of heart attack. They just didn't know exactly why until now. For the first time, researchers from the Baker Heart and Diabetes Institute and Monash University have been able to show in the lab using animal models how the glucose-lowering drug also stabilises plaque that builds up in the arteries, causing a heart attack.
We could really nicely show that these plaques are more stable, they don't rupture.
Their findings published in the Journal of the American Heart Association.
It is very important to have a new tool now treating your diabetes, but in the same time also protecting you from heart attacks.
1.8 million Australians are living with diabetes. Those with the disease are up to 4 times more likely to suffer a heart attack, as it accelerates the build-up of plaque in the body. As well as treating diabetes, the daily tablet is also approved for use in patients with kidney disease and heart failure. And while a clinical trial is still needed, this research has the potential to save many lives.
These drugs are well tolerated by patients, so it's a very fast process to get this into the clinic and to provide the benefit to patients.
It's explaining some of the mechanisms that'll allow us to use the drugs more effectively and in a more targeted kind of way.
As for Daniel, he's happy to learn of the added benefit of his diabetes medication, but has also made some big changes to his life.
And try and keep myself positive and try and be active, and certainly I do a lot more exercise.
Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Families flee Victoria for interstate holidays as Melbourne Airport records its busiest day in 6 months. Why you should plan ahead next. Plus, Australian women make a formal complaint over a Qatar Airways nightmare. And to the rescue, skiers save a dog buried by an avalanche. Seven Australian women who were escorted from a Qatar Airways plane in Doha at gunpoint and subjected to physical examinations have now complained to the OECD. The incident occurred in October 2020 when officials were looking for a mother who had abandoned her baby in a rubbish bin at the airport. The women want an apology from the Qatar government and the airline. Melbourne Airport was the busiest it's been in 6 months as families fled for an interstate getaway. But local holidaymakers are being warned because cancelling because of COVID won't mean an automatic refund. Chris Kohler has the details.
Bathers and snorkels packed, it's time for a holiday. Thousands of families flowed through Melbourne Airport today, all waving goodbye to their home state.
Somewhere, anywhere
Just
than
to
here.
do anything half exciting.
An international trip is now possible, but most are staying in Australia. In fact, Melbourne Airport was today the busiest it's been for 6 months. And while more than 60,000 passengers are flying domestic, less than 5,000 are heading overseas.
Oh, there's no doubt that this is going to be a big year for the Australian tourism industry from a domestic point of view.
And holiday spots are now booked solid.
From the 27th onwards, the calendar has been chock-a-block.
Noosa accommodation provider Glenn McClellan confirms demand has rocketed back. Some venues are charging up to 50% more than pre-COVID summers, and off-peak discounts are disappearing. But that's not slowing down holiday-starved Australians.
We could spend your entire life wondering and not doing something, so yeah, I think you just need to jump in.
Has it been a while since you've been on holiday?
Yeah.
There is a risk because while airports and holiday spots will be busy this year, if your plans are scrapped at the last minute thanks to a positive COVID test, your money back may not be guaranteed.
Well, I can't see them getting a refund under those circumstances.
A case-by-case and often complicated system will remain despite soaring infection numbers.
I think this is the moment for travellers to understand that they've got to do their research up front and ask all of those questions about what happens if something goes wrong before they finalise that booking.
Chris Kohler, 9 News.
Buried alive under a mountain of snow, the odds were stacked against a dog lost in a Colorado avalanche. But just when skiers thought time had run out, Apollo's furry black nose poking through the powder became a beacon of hope. Liz Daniels explains.
In the aftermath of an avalanche...
Holy see where it broke. Oh, that's terrifying.
2 skiers skim the snow searching for any sign of life.
Is there anyone stuck?
A dog, no bird.
A dog?
Yeah.
The dump's so deep they can barely stay upright, but they poke and prod to feel for movement.
This is tragic.
As the helmet GoPro rolls, 15 minutes fly by, nothing, not even a whimper.
Yeah, I think we need to get out of here. This is a lost cause. That dog's dead.
Only when they start packing up do they spot it.
Oh, I found him! I found him!
A cold, wet nose sticking through the thick blanket of snow.
No, I can see him.
Oh, hey, buddy. Hey, buddy.
And a frantic rescue follows.
We're coming, buddy.
Shovels, hands, scoop by scoop, he's dug out. First a head, then a paw, and a soggy pooch is back on his feet.
You okay, buddy? A little scared?
A pat to say thank you, and a wag of the tail to say he's okay. This is Apollo, the luckiest dog in Colorado.
Dude, that's a miracle.
And these skiers go home, mission accomplished. Liz Daniels, 9 News.
An unexpected visitor has joined golfers for a round on Christmas Island. The group returned from the green to find this enormous crab attached to one of their bags. The big guy certainly lived up to its name, the robber crab, refusing to let go of the driver until it snapped before making off with the cover. The latest in sport is next as the world reacts to Alex de Minaur's statement win, plus Ash's big admission ahead of her first test of the summer. Decision time for test selectors as Hazelwood pushes his case, and history for a Melbourne basketballer making us giddy with excitement. Even after 3 years at the top of women's tennis, Ash Barty says she's still working to become a complete player. Preparing to begin her season in Adelaide, Barty knows she's being hunted now more than ever. Here's Braden Ingram.
She might have the Wimbledon title to her name, but as Ash Barty embarks on a fresh Australian Open tilt, that counts for little.
There'll be 128 of us in the draw. We'll all do the same thing and go and try and do the best that we can, and that's all you can ask. That's all you can do.
After shutting down her 2021 season early, the forever humble champion is again fine-tuning her game, knowing full well complacency is the enemy.
It's a complete development of everything. Time and time again, I want to try and be the complete player. I want to try and make sure there are no holes in my games.
Still with a fortnight to prepare for the Open, the 25-year-old will commence her season this week in Adelaide, and she's wary of the many threats gunning for her #1 ranking.
It feels like it's just good competition. Genuinely, there's really good depth, and you have to bring your best time and time again to be able to compete with everyone and give yourself a chance to win the big titles.
One of those is good friend Simona Halep, the Romanian fighting back up the rankings, having dropped to 20th following injury.
I like her a lot, and it's an inspiration for me how she comes back after a long break. Like she did 1 year and then she won a Grand Slam. It's pretty amazing what she's doing, and I like her as a person.
And after 2 decades of Melbourne Park appearances, it's almost game, set, match for Sam Stosur, the 2011 US Open champion, to retire from singles immediately after the Australian Open.
You don't have to worry about February or March or April or anything like that, so go out there and enjoy it, and you know, I think it's a pretty unique prospect to be in, knowing that it's going to be one of your last few matches and you're at home playing.
Braden Ingram, 9 News.
Alex de Minaur says he's in the best shape of his life and ready to make a big impact at Melbourne Park after a stunning win over Matteo Berrettini at the ATP Cup. Australia's top-ranked male yelled, "This is my court," as he beat the world #7 in straight sets.
It's not about how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get knocked down and get back up again. So that's what I want to keep doing.
The Aussies completed a shock win over Italy with victory in the doubles. They now face Russia tomorrow. Meanwhile, in today's action, Spain flexed its muscles with a dominant victory over Team Norway. Steve Smith is happy to be back in Sydney for his home test. He's desperate to star against an English outfit that's seemingly rudderless, with Joe Root today refusing to commit to his future as captain. Sam Jordan has more.
Standing in the middle of the SCG, one of his happiest hunting grounds, it's no surprise Steve Smith is smiling as he looks to rediscover big runs.
Hopefully this week can spend a lot of time out there and score a big one, and help us continue to have success as a team.
Steve Smith continues to dominate.
The last time he faced the English in an Ashes series, Smith averaged 110. This time around, though, he's yet to hit triple figures.
It's just been difficult getting rhythm in the middle. I think all the wickets we've played on, you've never really felt in. It's just about trying to find as much rhythm as you can and hang in there for as long as possible, and defending really well, leaving well, and then pouncing on anything loose. And I think that's what the guys that have scored runs throughout this series have done well. And it's about doing that again out here.
Smith spent more time on centre wicket today, facing Josh Hazelwood. The quick firming for a return from injury.
The ball seemed to be coming through quite nicely. The guys have a lot of trust in him to make the right decision. He knows his body better than anyone, and he's played a lot of cricket now, so I'm sure they've got plenty of faith in Josh and what he wants to do.
England say they're a united team. Today, they were poles apart.
An extra person, yeah. That's it.
A COVID-safe pink test photo for the tourists, with skipper Joe Root front and centre. But under mounting criticism, he wouldn't say for how much longer.
I'll look at my future beyond this tour at the end of it. You know, I think they're questions for me to answer. I don't think that's a distraction that should be around the group or I should be wasting energy on right now.
Sam Jordan, 9 News.
Melbourne basketball sensation Josh Giddey has made NBA history, becoming the youngest ever player in the league to record a triple-double. 19-year-old Giddey racked up 17 points and 13 rebounds in Thunder's clash with the Mavericks, but it was his 14 assists that stole the show in Oklahoma City.
And it's from 8 down to 6 as Giddey put it on a platter for Pokashevsky, the happy melody up top.
Giddey surpassed some big names to get the record, including Luka Doncic, LaMelo Ball and even LeBron James. Chelsea and Liverpool have played out in the Premier League thriller with...
This is a firework of a football match!
There were opportunities galore in a frantic second half, although neither side could hit the back of the net. Elsewhere, Leeds moved clear of the relegation zone with a 3-1 victory over Burnley. And bizarre scenes in the NFL where a petulant star had been handed a reality check. Antonio Brown from Tampa Bay cracked it mid-match, ripping his shirt off and hurling it into the crowd. He then made a hasty exit down the tunnel, not to be seen again, and his coach had seen enough.
He is no longer a buck. All right, that's the end of the story. Let's talk about the guys that went out there and won the game. It
proved a costly hissy fit. Brown needed just 8 more catches and 55 receiving yards this season to unlock a $1 million performance bonus. Time now to check back with Maddie. And can we expect cooler conditions again tomorrow, Maddie?
Yes, Dougal, a little warmer than today, but still more than 10 degrees cooler than the intense heat around New Year. There's some interesting weather after that, though, and I'll have all the details for you next. Hello again, and it's been a perfect day to open the doors and windows to let the cooler air inside. Melbourne's hot spell is over, and after 4 days in the 30s, the city only just made it into the 20s today, peaking at 20.3 early this afternoon. The southerly breezes were rather gusty at times, and the cooler air kept daytime temperatures to the low to mid-20s right across Melbourne. And that was the case for most of southern Victoria, and although it also cooled down a little through northern districts, the mercury still climbed into the low to mid-30s. Out over the Coral Sea, tropical cyclone Seth has been downgraded to a tropical low, but it's causing devastation as it sends in extreme high tides along the New South Wales and Queensland coasts. Those areas will be battered with dangerous surf for at least the next 2 days, and gale force winds of 90 to 100 kilometres an hour are forecast along the Gold Coast tonight. For us, a trough will linger over central and eastern parts of the state, and that will continue to trigger storms and gusty winds across the eastern ranges. Then we'll feel the effects of that system on Wednesday with humidity, potentially severe storms and heavy rain. Those conditions are likely to continue on Thursday and Friday, and by Saturday, these areas in pink are expected to accumulate 50 to 100 millimetres of rain. Tomorrow, south to southeasterly breezes will push across Victoria, and along with cloudy skies, that'll keep temperatures down through southern parts. But once again, it will climb into the low to mid-30s through the north. Scattered showers are forecast across the south, and there could be some isolated thunderstorms across the eastern ranges in the afternoon and evening. It'll be another cooler night across Melbourne with minimums mostly between 13 and 15, and then we can expect a cloudy day, but maximums will be a few degrees higher than today. 23 for western suburbs along with Geelong and Rosebud, and Frankston should warm up to 26. Pakenham, Moorabbin and Ringwood are heading for 25. The city is forecast to drop to 15 before reaching 24, and despite the cloud, the UV index will be extreme, so sun protection is recommended from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Conditions will change significantly on Wednesday. Up to 30 millimetres of rain and thunderstorms could be severe, producing even heavier falls. It'll become quite humid as well, 28 degrees on Thursday, and once again storms could produce heavy falls. Similar conditions on Friday, easing on Saturday and cooler as well, 21 degrees, and then a couple of beautiful days after that, 25 on Sunday and 26 on Monday. But we've got a cloudy day on the way tomorrow, and after a low of 15 degrees, the city is heading for 24, and then some tropical storms arrive, Dougal.
I can feel the humidity already. Thanks, Maddie. And that is 9 News for this Monday. Layla is next with a current affair. Enjoy your evening. Good night.